Whenever Gabb gets a new partner or new supplier, before we commit to them or make an agreement with them, we need to make sure they're aligned with our mission. That's always number one. So our mission is to protect kids and families. And so when we bring them in, the first thing we talk about before talking about financials or the agreement or anything like that, it's what our mission is and how we want to protect kids. And we always make sure that they're aligned with that first.
Of your operating system or firmware. As you ship the new, let's call it, send your SMS app, you've got to make sure it's compatible with firmware version 3, 4, 5, 6, because that's what you've got in the field. How big of a headache is this, and what's the strategy been?
Right now, we use 3 different OEMs for our 3 different products that we sell. So for the Gabb Watch 3E, the Gabb Phone 4, and the Gabb Phone 4 Pro are all different OEMs, and they all do the firmware. So we have 3 different OEMs doing 3 different firmwares for 3 different products. It is tricky. There's pros and cons to that. One of the pros is that you don't have all your eggs in one basket. Security-wise, though, we have to make sure that we can't let kids hack that or get in and add things that they're not supposed to, or get around any of the third-party apps. We have to do a lot of security with third-party apps because a lot of kids, they know how to get to a browser. So you go in and you go to the support page of any third-party app, and boom, you're in a browser, and then you can search.
Wow, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah, and the thing is kids are way smarter than parents.
Welcome to Coredump Sessions, the podcast for IoT leaders, firmware engineers, and embedded systems enthusiasts. Each episode, we bring you insights from the leaders and innovators shaping the future of connected devices. We'll talk about what's breaking, what's working, and what it really takes to build reliable products at scale. Let's jump in.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this live session of Coredump Sessions, our ongoing conversation series on the future of embedded development. For those tuning in live, thank you for being here. So today we're doing something a little bit different. Instead of talking strictly about technology, we're going to talk about building products. And we're lucky to have with us today folks from the Gabb team, a company based in the United States at the forefront of kid tech. Representing the Gabb team today, we've got 2 incredible people I've gotten to know over the last few months. First, Chad. Chad is director of product at Gabb. He led the development of Gabb's first custom hardware, firmware, and software products, the Gabb Watch 3. And if you're parents, you've heard of the Gabb Watch. He played a key role in all previous Gabb watches and accessories. Prior to Gabb, Chad led Verizon's trade-in program and co-founded a mobile gaming accessories company where he served as chief product officer. A lifelong entrepreneur, Chad has launched, acquired, and sold multiple businesses throughout his career. A father of 6, he draws inspiration from his family to guide product features at Gabb, always creating with real families in mind. Welcome, Chad. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Francois. It's great to be here.
We also have Lance. Lance was a founding partner at Gabb and has been there since the beginning. He's currently SVP of marketing and has been instrumental in the company's explosive growth, leading marketing on every product release. Before helping to launch Gabb, Lance was a partner and CEO of EKR Creative Agency, where he forged and reforged brands to create lasting value. In addition to his agency work, Lance was a partner for Trust Leadership Network. As a dedicated father of 6, wow, you guys really have me beat. Lance knows how critical it is to stay connected with family. His leadership at Gabb reflects his focus. Welcome, Lance. I'm really looking forward to the perspective you can bring to this conversation about building connected products.
Thank you, Francois and team. We appreciate your bringing us on.
So let's start by talking about the specific market you're in, kid-safe tech. What is kid-safe tech? What makes it different from broader consumer electronics? And tell us a little bit about what you've learned about this market over the last few years.
Yeah. So kid-safe tech is a relatively new category, something that I would say kind of became known around 2018, 2019. So when we think of kid-safe tech, it's tech, hardware, and software that combines to offer safe solutions for kids, so they can stay connected to their to their parents and loved ones without the worry of inappropriate content or excessive screen time or predators, all the scary things that the internet can bring, and the power of one of these devices. And so, uh, there's other kid safe tech. You might even be able to say, well, a helmet for a bicycle is kid safe tech, right? But as far as Gabb's focused, it's technology, hardware and software that allows parents to at least trust tech enough to give something to their kid where they can stay connected, know where they are through GPS, call and text, but yet still have a step into some of the dangers without giving them a full-fledged device, at a too early age that can be very harmful.
And is this a market that is made possible by IoT specifically? Like, would you say that what's unique about this market is that these devices are connected? The difference between a helmet for a bike and a Gabb watch is the intelligence, the interactivity. Is IoT at the center of this business?
Chad?
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, we're all about connecting families. And so we want to make sure that parents and kids are connected together, and having IoT devices is huge with that. So, for example, our watches and phones, they both connect to My Gabb app, which is a parent app on the parent's phone, so that they can set the parental controls for their kids. They can choose what they can see, what they can't see. They get alerts on anything that bad bad that might happen. Even with incoming texts on phones, they can get alerted if their kid is texting or getting incoming text of something dangerous, talking about suicide or talking about cyberbullying or getting cyberbullied or cyberbullying somebody else. And so we're really big on just giving the parents control of what they want their kids to see and what they don't want them to see. And IoT devices make all that possible.
And I would add
Yes.
to that, Francois, that yes, IoT device, yes, we're also squarely in the business of what's called an MVNO. So we are a connected device that uses cell towers to make phone calls and to send SMS and MMS text messages. So that's what we have, a safe network. We connect to cell towers. Our watches and our phones have little antennas in them, just like your phone and your watch does. They have their own phone numbers. So these are standalone devices that connect to cell towers, and then we we are the billing agency as well. So they pay us for the cellular connection.
And Lance, bring us back to the beginning. Why does Gabb exist? And what Gabb did you see in the market? What did you think there is something that needs to exist that isn't yet served by existing solutions?
Yeah, so Gabb was not my idea. It was our original founder who had some young kids, wanted to get them a phone, was disgusted with the opportunities out there. So this was around 2018. And so kind of came together and said, oh my gosh, there's not a product that,
Right.
I mean, there you could argue there was a flip phone at the time. And, the funny thing is, you walk into an AT&T store in 2018 and say you want a flip phone, and they look at each other like, maybe Amazon has one.
They'll go in the back and maybe find one on the floor.
And so that was the premise of just seeing an immediate product need without a product fit. And so then we went to work, and I mean, you have an idea, but yeah, you need to resource that. So, we did an Indiegogo campaign, raised over $100,000 just on the concept, and that proved, oh my gosh, engaged parents want a device for their kids. And so we did a fast follow with the first phone, that we ever did, and it's called the Z1, the Gabb phone, the Z1. And we sold that in August of 2019. We would not have been able to do it without partners. We had OEM partners that built the hardware. We didn't know how to build hardware. We just knew we had an idea and how to sell it. And so a heavy partner relationship, but based on a need in the market that wasn't being solved by anybody. And so it's kind of perfect time, perfect place. And I will say, and even to this day, there's a lot of places that you can get the cell phone, but the big boys, they're selling more, more screen time, more apps, more monthly fee, more data, more movies, more entertainment. And Gabb's coming in and saying, hey, kids are spending 8 hours a day on their phones. That's 24 hours a day by the time they're 18. The opportunity cost of that, let alone let alone all of the harmful stuff that can happen. Chad hinted at some of those, is just incredible. And so Gabb was perfectly positioned and built a brand around, yeah. The big boys, they say they might have a parental control here and there, but Gabb cares about protecting kids and connecting families. And that's why we were able to just really take off.
Tell me, Chad, Lance talked about partners and how they were essential to building a product at the beginning. So, you're here deeply involved in the custom hardware development at Gabb. And that's, in some ways new, right? Your first hardware products were built with partners. Increasingly, you're building them in-house or building some of them in-house. Tell me a little bit about what you've learned in this process, what you're trying to do more yourself within what you're willing to share, of course. What the key, where are you putting the most of your efforts, and what you wanted to control really with custom development. I think there are a lot of makers out there and product thinkers who would think you can just go to a factory with an idea and get a product that works perfectly out of the box. But as you and I know, it's not that straightforward. You have to have a strong vision. You have to have a strong point of view on quality. You need processes in place to iterate with those partners. So share a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'd say, first of all, whenever Gabb gets a new partner or new supplier, before we commit to them or make an agreement with them, we need to make sure they're aligned with our mission. That's always number one. So our mission is to protect kids and families. And so when we bring them in, the first thing we talk about before talking about financials or the agreement or anything like that, it's what our mission is and how we want to protect kids. And we always make sure that they're aligned with that first. Every partner we've worked with has been very aligned with that mission. Everybody has a story of a friend or a family member of some kid that has either found something they shouldn't see on YouTube, or have been cyberbullied, or have been, some things that you see on social media can lead to depression, other things. And all of that has, there's been a lot of evidence of that lately and a lot of data about that lately. So everyone has a story about that. So every time we talk to a new partner, from the people that we work with, the product managers, all the way up to the CEO, has a story of that happening. And so it's very easy for them to say, okay, we believe in Gabb's mission. We're aligned with what you guys are doing. We want to help and we want to be a good partner for you. So that's number one.
If I can interject, so I think something really interesting here, thinking of partners as not so outside of the journey or outside of the mission, but really more like building a team of organizations that may not be technically teammates or may not be technically colleagues, but who are fully bought into the mission and excited about the vision, so that you can all pull in the same direction from the same sense of purpose. I think too often when we work with suppliers, we keep them at arm's length, and that doesn't allow them to be as effective as they could be otherwise. I really like that insight.
Thank you. Yeah, we do not operate in a transactional way with our partners. We are one team. We don't like pointing fingers and saying who made this mistake, who made that mistake, or if we're dealing with two partners at the same time and there's this triangle where everyone's pointing to each other, blaming each other. We are not about that at all. We're saying we don't care whose fault it is or where the issue is, if there's a bug or if there's a problem with hardware or software or firmware or telecom or APIs or anything else. It's, let's just figure out how to fix it. We don't care whose fault it is. We need to fix it and make sure that kids are being protected and that kids and parents can rely on this product. That's it. That's all we care about. And so that's what we're focused on. As far as what we own and what partners own, that, to be honest, that ebbs and flows quite a bit, especially with a new partner. So we'll get a new partner. We'll say, okay, we want you guys to build this. We want to build that. And then as we build them and as we see how they work in the market, sometimes we switch. So there's been times where we've built apps and we've said, hey, talk to our partner and say, can you take it on and build these 3 apps? And then, you guys built these 2 apps, but it actually makes more strategic sense for Gabb to own those now. So we're going to take those over. So it ebbs and flows quite a bit. Right now, the main thing is that we rely heavily on partners for hardware and firmware. So we don't do that too much on our side with hardware and firmware. We rely on the expertise of others and grow in our knowledge and understanding of everything and want to make sure that we have the best hardware and firmware. But what we're really focused on is the software, and especially subscription-based software and software that is focused on connecting parents and kids. So we're bringing more and more of that in-house and making sure that firmware, hardware, telecom is outsourced.
And if we can zoom in on one definition, is in your case, what do you call firmware? right? Because you have applications, operating system, what you might call the BSP, the low-level board support, maybe even the bootloader, the BIOS. Like where do you draw that line where that's, firmware versus the application software that your team might be building?
Yeah, that's a great question. So most of what you just mentioned, we refer to as firmware. Mainly the operating system is firmware.
What's under it? Okay.
Yeah, the booting, all that, we have that as firmware and rely on partners for that. Software are mainly the app layer things. And so the things that the customers see, the launcher, the different applications that are on the devices that we have, that's where we really focus and try to provide value, provide great UI, UX for the customers, and make sure parental controls as well on the parent app side. We brought that in-house and want to make sure that parents have full control over their kid's device, and we want to own all of that because that's our strategy that aligns well with where we're going as a company.
Lance, what do you see? So obviously one of the big themes this year, and I've talked about it a lot in the podcast, is AI. I think every company is trying to figure out, what does AI mean for me? What is it changing for my business? How might I use it to build amazing products? Is that something you're thinking about? How do you see it changing the way you are building products?
Great question. Yeah, we if we could pat ourselves on the back a little bit, we leaned into AI before AI was cool because we, ultimately we have a few moats at Gabb. One is concept of filtration, right? Being able to monitor text messages between two friends. All of a sudden, sex or alcohol come up, and we let that go through, but then we tell the mom, hey, mom, there's conversations over here happening. You may want to have a conversation, right? So flagging of inappropriate content. It's all AI on the back end. We have the only kid-safe music platform on the planet. We partnered with the 3 major labels that own 90% of all music out there, and they love us because we're not beeping and bleeping. It's just if it doesn't pass the lyrics don't pass our filtration, and that, there's the easy stuff. You can guess the easy words that are easy, but what about innuendo? So that's a little harder. So we've got a smart engine that filters lyrics, and then parents trust us that, if they listen to Gabb music, as a consumer of Gabb music, I know that I can have all the hits without the explicits, and it's not just beeping and bleeping, but it's just out of there. And then take that a little further, guys, and you've got like album art. You may have appropriate songs that would pass our filtration, but then, man, that album art's a little risque, for my 11-year-old boy, and so that's also part of our service as well. So leaned into AI early on, but then, and there's other places we use AI. That's just to name a couple.
Yeah.
But then future. All right. Well, what is AI? How we're constantly on our innovation team thinking about, all right, what's the interaction that a child wants with a device on the wrist and in their pocket right now, and 2 years from now, and 4 years from now? Is the concept of a browser a yesterday thing, right? We've the experience that you and I have had with a Google search and Gemini result set being at the top of that, right? So that's, and even down to the OS level of like, all right, how would we have a core set of AI OS that would, with a small LLM on the device that would drive interactions and even parental controls. So we're definitely thinking about it heavily and investing in it, but with thinking of it from the kid's standpoint. Yeah. We have a unique situation where our customer is not our consumer.
Right.
They don't have the money.
Mom's the one that lays the credit card down, but the kid's the one we got to make happy. And that's, we need to make mom happy too. Don't get me wrong.
Totally.
But so there's a pool there as well. So the phone of the future will be very interactive, and that also has to be filtered. Which country has the most elephants? All right, cool. If you're 9 years old, you want to know the answer to that, but you don't, as a parent, you don't want to know the other stuff that might come out of a search like that, right? Or so safe AI result sets that would be age gated and appropriate. What's appropriate for a 7-year-old, fine. For a 14-year-old, a parent may be able to expose more more information or risk, if you will, and allow every household is different, and allow this age gating across the software to where a parent can choose the style of filtration that is best for their home.
I mean,
So
you
you may
should
have
just
an
sell
AI
that.
watching an AI. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, you should just sell that on the internet. You don't need a watch or a phone for that service, by the way.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think the other people are or other companies are gonna be doing that. You had mentioned building for the kids 2 years from now and from 4 years from now. Like, I think a question we have here is: are you building for the kids or are you building for the parents? Like, what if I don't want my kid actually interfacing with AI, or just some parents may not at all? Like, are you building for kids or the parents? Like, whose desires?
So I'll answer that through an example. Parents are ultimately in charge of how they want to run their household. And so we sell to the parent. Some parents may have a certain level of comfort with different technology, and another parent may have zero kind of comfort level. So we have devices, for example, at the lowest level, all you can do is send a text message. You can't send a picture message. Why? Because there's certain parents that don't want their kids to be able to send picture messages. And social media is not even an option. You couldn't put it on there if you hired the smartest kids in your local university, because it's so locked down. So we sell to the parent that is the one that is making decision. In our home, we choose to have the system of moral governance is this way, and so we're going to use the parental controls on the Gabb phone to manage that. But on the other hand, we also very much realize that every kid is pulling out a phone in junior high, and they don't want to be embarrassed by it, right? So there's got to be pull from the kid as well. And there's a maturity of a kid. Not all 15-year-olds are the same. Some can look around a living room and realize, oh my gosh, all my friends are zombies. They're all just looking at their screens, and they can step out of that. But an example that Chad's familiar with, and probably his story to tell, is we have a I'd call it a game, but it's really not. It's more of a task tool inside of our Gabb watch, where kids can earn coins by doing household chores, and then those coins unlock activities by a little pet, right? So you want your dog to do a backflip, make your bed. If you want to take your cat for a walk, or give it a new outfit, then do the chores. So
The modern age chia pet.
yeah. Yeah. So
Like,
that's an example of, mom's buying, but kid is the pull product. And we have all kinds of stories. We've got hundreds of thousands of devices all over the United States. There's probably not a county in the United States that doesn't have quite a few of our devices, even the most rural. So you'll see a third grade girl go into her third grade class at the beginning of school, and she's got a Gabb watch. And then we'll hear from teachers, like, within 3 weeks, like 15 kids have that watch on, because why? Because the kid is the advocate. That's where Gabb wins. Ultimately, Gabb wins when mom wants it and the kid advocates it. And that doesn't always happen, right? Sometimes you start getting 14, 15, 16, and all your friends have an iPhone, and you're like, why don't you love me, mom? Don't you trust me like my neighbor down the street trusts her daughter? So it's the constant navigation of all of that.
And talking about AI more on one more time, Chad, on the technical side. And by the way, Lance, I think the idea of the kid has to find the product cool and the parent has to achieve their family's goal with the product feels like a really tough balancing act. Because I will tell you, when my dad put a laptop, hours tracking system when I was a kid on my laptop, that was the least cool thing that I perceived. But amazing that kids like it so much that they tell their friends to get it too. On the AI side, Chad, one of the things that we've talked to with other guests is so AI is something we all want to put on our products, at least as a marketing tool. But we know that actually in practice, doing it in the cloud versus doing it on the device is a complex technical decision. What have you found? What have you found are the interesting kind of learnings there? You've talked about trying to put very small LLMs on the device itself. I imagine that things like cover art analysis you'd want to do in the cloud, for example. What have you learned there? What have you experimented with?
Yeah, we've seen that and I've been really lucky on the Gabb side. I work on the wearables product, but I've been able to lead the AI team at Gabb as well, which has been really fun. We're trying to get more stuff integrated across the board, across all our products and working together well. And we've put some things on the product and we've put some things in the cloud. I think right now it kind of depends on the hardware that we're using. So with
Mm.
phones, they have a lot more space, a lot more storage, a lot more memory. And so we can put more things on the device on the phones. With our watches, it's a lot trickier because there's a lot less memory, a lot less storage. And so we're looking more into cloud-based solutions there. I think across the board, from what we've seen, cloud-based is the way to go for most of it. But that has its own difficulties as well and costs to put everything in the cloud. But yeah, it really depends on the hardware that we're using. But right now we're looking more cloud-based.
So moving to the difference between building for kids versus building for the average consumer, Tyler and I worked on smartwatches a while ago now. I think it was 10 years ago that we were working on the Pebble Time. Tyler, what do you see as the key difference between what we did at Pebble and building something like the Gabb watch? If we were building the Pebble to help families keep their kids safe, how might have we changed the products?
I mean, I guess we made the Pebble Watch so customizable and I guess hackable because we wanted to. We were just nerds wanting to customize every aspect. I actually was thinking about this like with parents and kids and trying to find that exact balance that like the kid is happy and the parents are happy. You probably have to have a knob and switch on literally everything in the Gabb system, both in the carrier and the software and the watch and the hardware. That's a similarity. I think one thing we did well at Pebble as well is it felt like a flip phone. It felt like a flip phone from the 80s and the 90s. And I honestly think it was kid approved. Like you couldn't look at bad images on the Pebble if you wanted to. And you could only read, 80 characters at a time anyways. But I also, I mean, like, it's funny now, Pebble is coming back. I'm very curious to see how many kids wear a Pebble watch or if Gabb and Pebble are kind of like, you see some kids wearing Pebbles and many more kids probably wearing Gabb because I think it'll just be different.
I imagine for me, security would be one of the topics, right? Like if it's a watch for hackers, a Pebble watch that we worked on, the lack of security was almost a feature. People could hack it and
Install whatever firmware you wanted.
install their own firmware on it. It didn't matter. It enabled them to make it their own in a way that I can't imagine your customers want at all, right? Like you wouldn't want the kid to be able to flash their own firmware to make the watch do whatever they want. So maybe this is one for you, Chad. How do you approach product security? This is a space where I think there's still not a lot of best practices. It's hard to get a very clear, like, this is how you secure a hardware product answer out there. You really have to come up with your own solution. Do I have it right that security has to be core to building this kind of product, especially because of your audience? And so how have you had to make different decisions that you would make if you had been building the Pebble Watch?
Yeah, so security is definitely a core component of what we do here. Dealing with kids' information, we have to make sure everything we do is COPPA compliant, which basically means that personal identifying information of kids is not just public and can get out there to anybody. And then
Right.
there's a bunch of other things we have to do to make sure we're COPPA compliant. And so we have to follow those regulations. We definitely don't allow kids to flash their own firmware on our devices. I think it's really cool that you guys did that at Pebble though and gave them that full customization. But with our mission at Gabb, yeah, that wouldn't work as well. So we really focus on personalization as much as we can based on still protecting kids. And so we believe that parents are the ones who choose what's best for their kids. We have a bunch of parent education articles. My wife, Jackie, I have to give a shout out to, worked on our content team for a long time, for 3 years at Gabb, and wrote a lot of great articles. And so we write information for parents to protect their kids, but we want to give them, at the end of the day, parents know what's best for their kid, and they know their kid way better than any company will ever know that. And so we want to give them full personalization and personalize it as much as they want. And so we launched a phone a few years ago. It's called the Gabb Phone Pro. And so right now we have the Gabb Phone Pro 4 as our latest version of that. And that one allows parents to add apps to their kids' devices, third-party apps. So that was the first product we did that allows that. So we believe a lot in tech and steps. So security is huge across the board. But what we kind of look at it as, you come in, you get a watch from ages 5 to 12, and you have a kid that has a fully locked down watch that can call, text, locate, and then has a few apps. Gabb Lance mentioned Gabb Go, which is a fun, the one where you get the pets and kids love that. And then you get the Gabb phone after that, most likely as you get older is what we're kind of hoping. And so as you get a little bit older, you get that when you're ready for a phone. And that's a fully lockdown phone that has some great apps that kids can use and parental controls. And then the Gabb Phone Pro adds third-party apps, and then parents control all of that. So we want parents to be able to have full control on all the different devices we have, add which apps they need to based on which product they have, and have control over that. Security-wise, though, we have to make sure that we can't let kids hack that, or get in and add things that they're not supposed to, or get around any of the third-party apps. We have to do a lot of security with third-party apps because a lot of kids, they know how to get to a browser. So you go in and you go to the support page of any third-party app, and boom, you're in a browser, and then you can search.
Wow, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah, and the thing is kids are way smarter than parents.
And they have a lot of time.
Best for their kid, but kids know how to get around everything with technology, and so they'll do stuff, and parents have no idea. And so we actually have groups.
So how do you block that in third-party apps?
What's that?
How do you block that in third-party apps? Because you'd have to change the apps themselves, no?
Yeah, we brought in an expert who understands Knox very well, and
Turns out he's only 12. No.
basically, no, we brought him in. But before we brought him in, we have all these platforms where we tell kids, "Okay, go try to hack our product," and then if they hack it, then we figure out ways to get around that and fix the problems. So my big thing is I think we should hire these kids. We should find a way to hire them. Say, come in and hack us. We'll pay you some money.
For sure.
It really helps. So yeah, security is huge for us. We need data breaches. Obviously, we have a team that's over security at Gabb to make sure those don't happen, and we need to make sure all our devices are secure for the kids and the parents, and then also that we don't have third parties trying to get kids' information.
Well, have you tried the
I have a funny. I was going to say I have a funny story about that, Francois.
Go ahead, Lance.
I hadn't thought about this in years, but a few years ago we had this kid from a rural community here. We're in Salt Lake City, and there's a lot of rural towns when you get south of us a little bit, and a town of 100 people. And all of a sudden we saw this kid making noise on Discord of some way that he had hacked one of our phones. And so, we didn't know who he was. So it took a little investigation. We find out that it was a kid and he was pretty harmless. And so we had actually invited him into our office. And I think he thought he was going to get his hand slapped, but instead we just we hired him, we celebrated him, we gave him a little bit of money and said, "Hey, you're on our advisory council." And he left with a bunch of swag and a bunch of, fun stuff, and went home and told all his friends that he worked for Gabb. And so just, that could have gone two ways, right? We could have really come after him hard, but instead we just celebrated his brightness.
And now he's an advocate. I bet.
Yeah.
Chad, you mentioned Knox. Is that, I think that's, do I have it right? Those are security and basically containerization solutions for Androids? Yeah,
that's right. That allows us to add third-party apps to our devices, but still have some control over those and some restrictions on them.
Lance, the other thing that I imagine is really sensitive is tracking of kids, right? You're a marketer, analytics is part of your job, right? Figuring out who comes on the website and buys or doesn't buy, who uses the product how, what features should we put forward? What do you need to do differently when the audience involves children and families, people who are probably very privacy sensitive in a world in tech, we're all tech people here, and analytics is a key part of how we iterate, right? And do data-driven decision making, data-driven product development, data-driven marketing. What do you have to do differently there?
It's a timely question because just yesterday I met with a person on my team that does all of our owned SMS and MMS channel marketing, and he's creating an activity report that we have an activity report that we send to parents on a weekly basis, and he's wanting to make that more rich, right? So in addition to the, hello, your kid sent 2,500 text messages over the last week and made 75 phone calls. We have all kinds of data points that we could expose to the parents, and we have a track like a step tracker, right? So that would be something that a parent would be like, "Oh, cool, Johnny walked 10,000 steps in the last 2 days." So kind of reminding the parents of why they love Gabb through an activity tracker. A kind of a weekly dashboard. So as I was meeting with him, and I won't get into the details, but as I was meeting with him, he was talking about all the things that he wanted to share on the activity tracker, but couldn't because we may store the data, but we don't have an API to it. And he was coming in the form of being a little frustrated. And I was like, well, there's a reason there, that we don't want to expose some of that data because we are talking about child data. So I'll give you an example. It's one thing if we know where the kid was on a GPS location 2 minutes ago. But if we tracked that for 6 months and then that was hacked and somebody with nefarious intent knows the pattern of a young boy or girl over the last 6 months, that's devastating, right? So that's
Yeah, you wouldn't want that responsibility.
I'm sorry?
You wouldn't want that responsibility too much.
No, so it does. I mean, we make decisions every day around what do we want to track and how do we want to expose it, and then the data model that Chad mentioned so just a minute ago, and then just the back end server security system to never have even some of the data, the PII data, to just really make sure it's secure. So there's kind of two elements to it: the PII data that we do collect, never having that be hacked, and then some of the data that we intentionally don't even want to track, so that we're not even exposed to that should there ever be a breach.
You bring up data minimization, which is a very big topic in the EU, where the EU's point of view is the most secure data is the one you don't collect.
Yes.
I think your team, the Gabb team, has to some extent come up with that framework on their own. I love to hear basically that there's data that your teams want and that they can't quite have access to, and that data minimization has naturally become a key part of how you think about it. I think that's really great.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll give you another just silly example. It's not silly, it's important, it's really thought out, but it proves this point. In this activity report, in theory, if we wanted to collect it, we could say the friend that your child communicates with the most is Sally. All right, well, we'll think about that, right? I mean, how that's potentially, or here's the top 10 friends that your child communicates with. Where we're talking about child data, we just have to look at that really carefully before we would ever expose that to a parent, because we're basically exposing the rights of another parent that don't even know that their daughter is in that activity report. So we just,
Right.
yeah. So the best thing to do is what you said in the EU is don't collect it and don't.
Then you're not tempted.
Right.
You're not tempted. Let's talk a little bit about the product lifecycle. So, you've shipped a lot of products. You said Gabb Phone Pro 4. That means there were 3 others before it, I imagine. So how do you think about your product development cycle? How long does it take to ship a product at Gabb? And, that's a question for you, Chad, but also what external factor drives the timelines? Is it about the holiday season and buying patterns there? Is it about
The school season, Francois?
The school season. How do you organize your product development cycle, and what do the deadlines look like? What constraints does that put on your engineers?
Yeah, so when we do custom hardware, it usually takes about 18 months from start to finish to launch a new custom hardware product. We have done it quicker than that. We've done it in 8 months before, but we prefer not to.
Wow, 8 months is tight.
That one was a doozy, and that was our custom hardware product. That was the Gabb Watch 3. We had to do it quick because of those seasonal things that we needed it out for. So we wanted it out for the beginning of back to school, which is always a big sales time for us, and then holiday. A lot of people like to open their Gabb products Christmas morning and buy them Black Friday and Cyber Monday and all that. So those are 2 big windows that we need to hit for launching product. But yeah, 18 months with custom hardware, about 12 months with white labeled hardware, and then we do, like I said, custom firmware and software for everything that we do. And so yeah, the big windows are. Sorry, go ahead.
So if you're going to hit back to school, that means you have to get your ship date probably at the beginning of a program is somewhere around like July, something like that, so that you can really you have a little room for, delays, as we know that always happens, but also so that you can get on shelves, you can get in partly distributed to different partners and all that well ahead of September. and I assume the buying season is actually August in this case. So June, July, so that means you start a program in January for June, July of the next year. Is that roughly the cadence, the seasons of your life right now?
Yes, that is. I mean, we'd like to get it even earlier because what we'd like is to get it out to people before the big sales periods. Um, we do a lot of fixing bugs and we do internal alphas and external betas before we launch any product, but we'd like to get it out for a couple of months before any big sale so that people can use it. We can get feedback. If there's any little things we need to tweak or update, then great. Customers, it's different when you do a beta with 100, 200 people versus selling this to thousands of people. You find more things when you sell to thousands of people and different areas of the country and everything. So, and we're in all 50 states. So yeah, if you go up to Alaska, Hawaii, there might be something different going on there than is going on in Utah. So we need to make sure all the bugs are fixed. So we work on that. We'd like to get it out as early as May potentially, and then have a couple months, fix some things. And then it's like, hey, this product is rocking for back to school and holiday.
So how many products do you develop in parallel? Because you've got phones and watches and I'm sure other things that you're dreaming up. With an 18-month cycle, which is relatively fast, still, if you're going to ship products every year, it means that you may have this year's product and next year's products in development at the same time. How do you juggle all of that with your teams?
It is very tricky. It is very tricky. We try to use as much software as we can from one product to the next. And so as we're fixing software or updating software, adding new features or adding new apps to a product, then we're like, okay, we need to build it in a way that is scalable and can go on to the next
platform.
Yes, exactly. So if the size of the device changes a little bit, or if the device is a little different shape, we need to make sure all our designs and coding will stretch and look good on different kinds of products. So that's really important to us. And so that's a big focus for us. And then I do what I can to try to shield the team from future products before they need to get too involved, because it's really hard to ask developers and designers who are like heads down focused on the current product to be like, okay, now we need to start developing for the next product. So they need to have in mind, like I said, what the next product is going to be so that they can build the current product so it can scale easily to the next product. And they need to know what's on the roadmap. But we try to just stay focused on the task at hand. And then I work with other team members to make sure, and then our handheld team as well, our phone team, which is other team members, to make sure that they're getting ready for the next product. And so very product manager driven, I would say, for future product facing. And then once it gets to the point where it's like, hey, we now need to hit timelines for our coding, for our APKs, for our backend, for our designs, then we start bringing in the other team members so they can start working on those things.
Lance, from a marketing and sales perspective, are you mostly focused on the next launch? Or, obviously the products improve over time. You're constantly developing them as well. How much of your energy goes towards, let's call it, like
ongoing support, marketing support of a product that's out there versus thinking about the next launch, which is always just around the corner?
So it varies, but usually the life cycle of a product is 1.5 to 2 years. And so once we perfect a product, we can lean heavily onto it for a while, right? And we like to future-proof our products that they'd last that long. So then the window you're talking about is, what about when you're between watch 3 and watch 4, right? And how, and so as was mentioned earlier, we try to line up our product launches to where, we wouldn't launch a new product on November 1st. We would launch a new product in May, so that by the time we get to holiday, and we have 3 big times. You could guess them. It's when kids get out of school, when they go back to school, and which is what we're in the middle of right now, back to school, and then the end of the year, which is November and December for us. Yeah, so it's surprisingly not a challenge, because by the time our big seasons come with new products, we've already we've already sold out of our previous version, and we've already done the messaging and positioning and assets and landing pages. And then, we market in multiple channels as well. And so those assets have plenty of time to get created without this awkwardness of two products. Now, I would be lying if I didn't tell you there have been times in this company where we have, we were so good at developing the next product that we hadn't sold out of inventory of our last one, and so we kind of had two at the same time, and that was fun. That was fun. But
You were too good, Chad.
So yeah, it's just it's an interesting game. You guys at Memfault are quite familiar with this, but hardware is a fun sport because you've got inventory management, and you've got different terms with different vendors. You're shipping from overseas. Some of our different channels require, like, when we put product on Amazon, they need it in their warehouses earlier than maybe if just to sell it, by FBM. So yeah, it's fun to manage all the dynamics of new products and inventory management.
Chad, what about sustaining? So you have 4 programs in flight. You've got this year's watch. Let's say it's April. You've got this year's watch. You've got this year's phone. You've got next year's watch. You've got next year's phone. Your team is super busy. And then last year's watch, all of a sudden, there's a thread on Reddit about how there's a problem. Who does that work? Is it the same team that's building the next gen? Is it a separate team that's there for sustaining? And whose hair is on fire on that day?
I think everyone's hair is on fire.
My hair's on fire. My hair.
Lance is like, I was all over Reddit. Someone's going to deal with this.
You guys don't know this, but Chad actually had hair like 2 years ago.
I wasn't going to ask.
Yeah, I had a full head of hair, like down to my shoulders. It looked a lot like Tyler's, but then I came to Gabb and
then the Gabb Watch 3 happened.
No, it's right. I would love to get to the point where we do not have the same team working on the current product that's working on the next product.
So you do have that, though, the same
At
team
this
that
time,
today.
At this, yeah, right now we do. And
honestly, I think it's pretty healthy as well. Like, I think they both have pluses and minuses. A sustaining team and a new team, it can become toxic.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, but usually we'll have, whichever developer built that app that is causing a problem on Reddit that Lance finds and lets us know about. We'll have that developer jump on it, and we'll have the other developers continue to work on what they're working on, so we don't lose track of the future either. And so there's definitely a balancing act. There are some times where it's a red alert and it's a huge fire, and we need all developers to stop what they're doing and jump on that. And so yeah, it's definitely a balancing act. You have to decide, okay, is this a big enough issue where we need to delay launch of the next product to jump on it? And that has happened before. Or can one developer work on it for a little bit and fix it, and then we'll have the other developers keep working on the new product? Or is it such a small thing, which we don't like these instances, but is it so small that it's going to be fixed on the next product? And is it affecting so few customers that we can help those few customers with workarounds until we get to the overall fix that's going to be on the next product, and will also be retroactively put on the current product? So there's a lot of, it's like the the magicians. I don't know if it's magicians or clowns, but they have the little sticks, and they have a plate on top, and they have a bunch of them, and they're all going at the same time, and they have to keep all of them up. So you just have to make sure that no plate falls. And if a plate's getting close to falling, sometimes you have to leave the other plates and go and make sure that one doesn't fall. And so yeah, it's just a circus act, kind of.
You have an idea what proportion of your time you spend on building the next product versus maintaining the old one?
Great.
Is the maintenance piece, the bugs that come up, the improvements you need to ship, is that more like 5%, or is that 50% of the time spent? Like how big of a chunk of your work, Chad, overseeing some of these teams is it?
Yeah, so it depends on the product.
Right.
So generally what we want is we want to launch the product, sustain it for 6 months, fix bugs, make sure everything's great, and then start working on new features after 6 months. That, in the perfect world, that's how it would be.
Yeah.
And then on the next product that takes 18 months to build. So we have new hardware every couple of years. That is not the case. That generally I would say it's about 75% current product and 25% the next product. And then as time goes on, you slowly start getting more and more, then 30% on the new product, then 40% on the new product. And as the last product gets more and more sustainable, as less and less bugs are coming in, as churn goes down, as our user satisfaction score goes up, then we can say, okay, that's now in a solid spot. Now let's continue to focus, and maybe then we get to 75% on the new product. But a lot of times it's even after 6 months, you're still 75% on the old product to make sure you're taking care of your current customers. I mean, your current customers are the ones keeping you in business. They're the ones that need to be protected. They're the ones that need to make sure that it gets to school safely. And so we love our customers, and we'll do anything to help them and what they need. And so we focus on the current customer first and the base. And if that means delaying future products, so be it, because our current customers are who we care most about. And then we'll add features for them. We'll add features for other customers that might not be a Gabb customer until a new feature, a new product comes out. But our focus is on our moms and kids that we have right now.
And parents and kids are there's so much word of mouth in those communities. I imagine, Lance, that your current customers are also your future customers. First of all, they're likely to buy your next product, and I imagine that they are the best advocates out there. The best marketers you've got are your current customers. Do I have that right, Lance?
Yeah, you sure do. And we focus heavily on that. So our Refer a Friend program is constantly changing and in flux to provide the best value to customers. We're a very data-driven marketing company. We've got dashboards that it would impress even the most seasoned data-driven marketer. So for example, we know exactly the percentages of multi-device families, those families that have more than one Gabb device, and we know their churn rate. They actually have a negative churn rate. Families that have more than one watch, or a watch and a phone, or two phones and a watch, they actually churn at a negative rate. In other words, that grows over time. That's fantastic. And so then we change our marketing tactics internally to, yes, we need a net new customer, but that net new customer also has another child, and we need to protect that child as well. And so there's a lot of efforts there. But word of mouth, we're pretty efficient in all of our channels, but our existing customer word of mouth, refer a friend is a significant part of our strategy.
We have a question from Chris Rogge, who said, so with your expanding variety of hardware in the field, these previous products, your variety of products, and the fact that you have, you mentioned it yourself, Chad, one platform where you try to have the apps more or less be centralized and developed once for all the different products, with, I'm sure, some differences by form factor. How do you do firmware versioning? Are you keeping all the devices, when you release version 8 of your operating system or firmware, are you updating every device so that they can all get the apps? Is there a point at which basically a device doesn't get the new app? Or do you have this matrix of compatibility that makes your life really difficult because, as you ship the new, let's call it, send your SMS app, now you've got to make sure it's compatible with firmware version 3, 4, 5, 6, because that's what you've got in the field. How big of a headache is this, and what's the strategy been?
Yeah, so it's more of the latter. A great question.
No.
I mean, right now we use 3 different OEMs for our 3 different products that we sell. So for the Gabb Watch 3E, the Gabb Phone 4, and the Gabb Phone 4 Pro are all different OEMs, and they all do the firmware. So we have 3 different OEMs doing 3 different firmwares for 3 different products. So it is tricky. There's pros and cons to that. One of the pros is that you don't have all your eggs in one basket. So if there's a problem with one OEM and there's something going on, and let's say we can't get watches or something for a while because of some storm that happens, and watches can't come in for a bit and we're out of them, then we still at least have 2 phones. And if one phone, for whatever reason, we can't sell, we still have another phone and a watch. And so we like the diversification there, but it does create a headache for my teams because we have to have 3 different firmwares. And so we do have, but a lot of the APKs we have, we share across the different devices. And then we can, when that APK gets updated and we're getting a new firmware and we want that in the new firmware, we send that APK to all 3 different of our partners. And so it's in the next firmware for each one. But yeah, it's tricky. And that's why we have a wearables team and a handheld.
Your teams build these APKs. These APKs get bundled into the OS image. and the whole thing is updated as a unit. And I guess your partners do a good amount of testing on the entire unit before the release. Is that right?
Yes, we do. We do the majority of the testing. So our partners do have QA teams that do the testing. And then we have to get, every time we do a new firmware, we have to get technical approval from the company that we work with on our telecom side to make sure that everything's
Yeah,
telecom
right.
as well. Then yeah, we roll out the firmware through a FOTA to our devices.
How many of those updates do you do every year?
We do, for each product, I'd say probably about 6.
Got it. So a good amount.
So
And
every
Lance,
other,
do you track the firmware updates or do firmware updates, are firmware updates marketing events at all? Or are firmware updates just something that happens in the background?
Yeah, I would say generally it's something that happens in the background. However, we have leaned into firmware updates. Our Watch 3E product, for example, was an update from our Watch 3 product that was mostly a firmware update. And so that's an example. This FOTA process we have is the team, Chad and his team have just really perfected it, in my opinion, to where, oh, here's a medium to major issue. Cool. It's fixed. All right. Over the next 3 days, it's going to get pushed out to 80% of all of our devices. And so that distribution process has been really sound. But no, I would say from a marketing standpoint, that they're usually just, minor bug fixes or enhancements. We don't lean into that too much unless we think it can be a rev or a rev. And as the example I gave you.
I love that as a marketer and a leader, you care about the speed at which your engineering teams gets to the bottom of problems and gets an update out the door to fix them.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, too often the sustaining part is undervalued by the business at many organizations. And it's clear that at Gabb, quality is really important.
Yeah.
And so the entire organization, from marketing to products to, I'm sure, sales and others, cares about that. That's really cool to see. With that, we're at time. As always, the conversation flows and we could always talk for another hour. Thank you to our attendees and to Chris in particular for his great question. Chad, Lance, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Best of luck with the start back to school season. I'm sure you're in the thick of it. I hope that this is another great year for Gabb.
Thank you so much. And we appreciate your partnership. Your solution helps us in real time significantly improve our product. So we talked briefly about partnerships and you're definitely a key part of that. So thank you.
Thank you for giving us an opportunity to help make kids safer. We're definitely on board with the vision. Thanks.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Lance.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this Coredump session. If you enjoyed the conversation and want to dig deeper, check out more episodes available wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube or at memfault.com/webinars. If you have any questions for our team, drop us a line at team@memfault.com. Until then, keep shipping. See you next time.